The throne room of the Empire was cold and dark. Black stone walls rose high toward a ceiling that disappeared into shadow. Purple light came through tall windows, casting strange patterns on the floor. At the far end of the room sat a throne made of obsidian, and on that throne sat Queen. She was young, too young, many whispered behind closed doors. At 23 years old, she had already ruled for 2 cycles. Her mother had died suddenly, poisoned by enemies who were never found, and had taken the crown before she was ready. But she had learned quickly. She had learned to be hard. She had learned to be feared. Had pale blue skin like all. Her eyes were silver, bright and sharp like polished metal. Her white hair fell past her shoulders, and she wore armor even in her own palace. She trusted no one. She could not afford to trust anyone. On this day, she sat alone on her throne, reading reports from her military commanders. The Empire controlled 47 worlds. 12,000 warships carried her flag across the stars. Billions of beings lived under her rule, most of them conquered peoples who had no choice but to obey. But there was one species that refused to submit: humans. Had never met a human in person. She had only seen images and recordings. They were strange creatures, smaller than, with soft skin in various shades of brown and pink. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no armored plates. They were physically weak compared to most species in the galaxy. And yet they kept fighting. Her mother had started the war with humanity 15 years ago. They had expected an easy victory. Humans had only colonized a small number of worlds. Their ships were old and slow. Their weapons were primitive. But the humans did not surrender. They fought for every planet, every station, every ship. When they lost battles, they came back stronger. When they destroyed their cities, they built new ones. When their soldiers died, more soldiers took their place. Did not understand it. No other species had resisted this way. What made humans so stubborn? What made them keep fighting when they had no chance of winning? She wanted to know. She needed to know. A door opened at the side of the throne room, and an old walked in. This was General, her chief military advisor. He had served her mother for 30 years before serving her. His blue skin had faded to gray with age, and he walked with a slight limp from an old wound. But his mind was still sharp. "My queen," he said, bowing low, "I bring news from the Border Patrol." Set down her reports. Speak. "Our scouts have detected a human vessel in the outer territories. A small ship, traveling alone. It appears to be damaged." Leaned forward on her throne. "A human ship? How did it get past our defenses?" "It came through the dead zone, my queen. The region where our sensors do not reach. The ship is called the Wanderer, according to its identification signal. Our scans show only one life form aboard." "One human," said softly, "alone." "Yes, my queen. A male, we believe. The ship is not military. It appears to be a civilian transport, modified for long-distance travel." Stood from her throne and walked down the steps. She moved slowly, thinking. A lone human drifting near her territory. It could be a trap. It could be a spy. Or it could be exactly what she had been waiting for. "I want him captured," she said, "alive." General hesitated. "My queen, it may be dangerous. Humans are unpredictable. Even one human can cause great damage if cornered." "I am aware of what humans can do, General. That is precisely why I want this one alive. I want to study him. I want to understand how these creatures think." "As you command, my queen." "Send 3 cruisers. Surround the ship and disable it. Tell the commanders that if the human is harmed, they will answer to me personally." General bowed again and left to deliver her orders. Returned to her throne and sat down. Her silver eyes stared at nothing as her mind raced with possibilities. For 2 years, she had been fighting her mother's war. She had won battles and lost battles. She had burned human colonies and watched human ships burn in return. But she had never spoken to a human. She had never looked one in the eye. She had never asked one the simple question that haunted her thoughts: why do you keep fighting? Perhaps this lone traveler could give her an answer. Far away, on the edge of space, a small ship drifted through the darkness. The Wanderer was not much to look at. It was old and patched together from parts of different vessels. The hull was from years of travel through dangerous regions of space. Inside the ship, a man sat in the pilot's chair, watching his scanner. His name was Cole. He was 34 years old, with brown hair that he had not cut in months and a beard that he had stopped trimming long ago. His eyes were dark brown, and they carried a weight that came from seeing too much pain. Had been traveling for 5 years. He had left Earth after the colony on New Virginia was destroyed. His wife had died in that attack. His daughter, Emma, had died with her. She was only 6 years old. For a long time after that, had wanted to die too. He had thought about flying his ship into the nearest star and ending his pain forever. But something had stopped him. Something had kept him alive. He had started studying He had learned their language by listening to intercepted communications. He had read everything he could find about their culture, their history, their beliefs. He had spent years preparing for a moment that most people would call insane. He was going to talk to the Queen. Not to negotiate, not to surrender, not to beg for mercy. He wanted to make her understand something that no one had ever understood about humans. When the 3 cruisers appeared on his scanner, was not surprised. He had expected them. He had planned for them. He activated the autopilot and set the Wanderer on a slow course toward a nearby moon. Then he climbed into a small escape pod hidden in the cargo bay. The pod was special. He had spent 2 years building it, installing stealth technology that would make it invisible to sensors. As the cruisers surrounded his empty ship, launched his pod in the opposite direction. He watched on a tiny screen as they boarded the Wanderer and found nothing. He allowed himself a small smile. The first part of his plan had worked. Now came the hard part. The pod's destination was programmed into its computer. It would take 18 days to reach 18 days of darkness, recycled air and silence. Closed his eyes and he thought of Emma. He thought of all the humans who had died in this war that seemed to have no end. He was not going to end the war with weapons. He was going to try something that no one had ever tried before. He was going to end it with words. The escape pod was smaller than a closet, could not stand up straight. He could not stretch his legs. He spent most of his time sitting in the single chair, watching the stars move slowly past the tiny window. The pod had enough air for 20 days if he breathed slowly. It had enough water for the same amount of time if he drank only when his throat became too dry to ignore. Food came in the form of gray paste that tasted like nothing but kept him alive. Had prepared himself for this journey. He had spent months training his body to survive on less. He had practiced meditation to keep his mind calm in small spaces. But nothing could truly prepare a person for 18 days alone in a metal box floating through enemy space. On the first day, he checked his equipment again and again. The stealth system was working. No ships appeared on his scanner. He was invisible, just as he had planned. On the second day, he slept. His body needed rest after the stress of the escape. On the third day, the memories came. He remembered the morning everything changed. It was a Sunday on New Virginia, was making breakfast in their small kitchen while Emma played with her toys in the living room, was sitting at the table, drinking coffee and reading news from Earth. The first explosion had shaken the house, had dropped his cup, had screamed. Emma had started crying. They had run outside and seen the sky filled with ships. The attack had come without warning. No declaration of war, no demands, no chance to surrender. They simply appeared and started burning everything. Had grabbed Emma in his arms and pulled toward the emergency shelter at the end of their street. They had almost made it. Almost. A weapon had struck the building next to them. The wall had collapsed, had been thrown forward, still holding Emma. When he turned around, was gone, buried under tons of broken stone. He had screamed her name. He had tried to dig through the rubble with his bare hands. But more weapons were falling and Emma was crying and he had to move. He had carried his daughter 3 more blocks before another explosion knocked them both to the ground. When opened his eyes, Emma was not moving. There was no blood, no visible wound, but she was not breathing. He had tried to save her. He had pressed on her chest and breathed into her mouth and begged her to wake up. But she was gone. His little girl was gone. They had killed 4 million people that day, and Emma were just 2 more numbers in the reports. No one important, no one that the universe would remember. But remembered, would never forget. In the escape pod, floating through the darkness of space, let the tears fall. He had cried many times over the past 3 years. The grief never went away. It just became something he carried with him, like a stone in his chest. But the grief was not why he was doing this. He was not seeking revenge. He had realized long ago that revenge would not bring an Emma back. Killing would not fill the emptiness inside him. He wanted something else. He wanted the killing to stop. He wanted no more fathers to lose their daughters. He wanted no more children to die because 2 species could not find a way to understand each other. That was why he had to reach the Queen. On the 5th day, his scanner detected a patrol ship, held his breath as it passed within 1,000 kilometers of his pod. The stealth system held. The ship continued on its way without seeing him. On the 8th day, he ran out of things to think about. His mind started playing tricks on him. He heard his voice calling his name. He saw Emma's face in the reflections on the window. He talked to them, even though he knew they were not real. On the 12th day, he started to doubt himself. What was he doing? Who did he think he was? One human alone trying to change the mind of an empress who ruled 47 worlds. It was madness. It was suicide. But then he remembered something Emma had said to him once. She was 4 years old, and they were watching a show about animals on Earth. A small bird was standing up to a much larger animal, protecting its nest. "Why does the little bird fight the big one?" Emma had asked. "Because it has to," had told her. "Because sometimes the small ones are the only ones brave enough to try." Emma had nodded seriously, as if this made perfect sense to her young mind. Smiled at the memory. He was the small bird now, and he had to try. On the 15th day, they appeared on his scanner. It was still far away, but he could see it growing larger with each passing hour. A purple planet with 3 moons, covered in dark forests and darker cities. The planet was called Prime. 30 billion lived there. It was the center of the empire, the seat of the Queen's power, the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. Was going to land there without permission. He was going to walk into the capital city. He was going to ask to see the Queen. It was completely insane. On the 18th day, his pod entered the atmosphere. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Queen was furious. Her cruisers had captured the human ship, but the human was gone. The commanders had searched every part of the Wanderer. They had found food, water, tools, and personal items, but no human. Had executed the squadron commander for his failure. She had ordered 100 ships to search the surrounding space, but there was no sign of Cole. "He must be dead," said Prince, her younger brother. He was 20 years old with the same silver eyes as his sister but a softer face. He had no interest in war or politics. He spent his time studying art and music from other worlds. His escape pod probably ran out of air. "No," said, "he is alive, I can feel it." Looked at her strangely. "Feel it? Since when does my sister trust feelings over facts?" Did not answer. She could not explain it herself. But something told her that this human was different. Something told her that she had not seen the last of Cole. General entered the throne room with more reports. "My Queen, we have analyzed the human's ship. We found something interesting." "Tell me." "He had books, my Queen. Hundreds of them, books about the Our history, our language, our customs. He has been studying us for years. Silver eyes narrowed. Why would a human study us? I do not know, my queen, but it suggests he has a purpose. This was not a random traveler who wandered into our space by accident. He came here deliberately. To spy. Perhaps, or perhaps something else. Stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the purple sky above her city. Somewhere out there, a human was planning something. She did not know what, but she intended to find out. Double the patrols, she ordered. Search every ship entering our space. If Cole is alive, I want him found. But was already on the planet. His pod had landed in a dense forest 100 kilometers from the capital city. He had buried the pod under branches and leaves, covering all traces of his arrival. Now he stood alone in an alien forest, breathing alien air, surrounded by creatures he had never seen before. He had a small bag with food and water for 3 days. He had a scanner to detect patrols. He had a knife for protection. And he had a plan. The capital city was to the east. He would walk through the forest, avoiding patrols, sleeping in trees, moving only when it was safe. It would take 3 days to reach the city. And then he would do something no human had ever done. He would walk into the queen's palace and ask to speak with her. Took a deep breath of the strange purple air and started walking. The forest of Prime was nothing like the forests remembered from Earth. The trees were black, with branches that twisted in strange spirals toward the purple sky. The leaves were silver, catching the dim light from the distant sun and making the whole forest shimmer. Strange sounds came from the shadows, clicks and whistles and deep rumbling noises that could not identify. His scanner showed life forms all around him, some small, some very large. He kept his knife ready, though he knew it would do little against the creatures that lived here. On the first night he climbed a tree to sleep. He tied himself to a thick branch with rope and closed his eyes. Sleep came slowly. Every sound made him jump. Every movement in the darkness made his heart race. But he survived the night. The second day was harder. He had to cross a river that his scanner said was filled with predators. He found a narrow section where the water moved slowly and waded across, holding his bag above his head. Something brushed against his leg underwater. He did not stop to see what it was. On the other side, he collapsed on the bank and caught his breath. His clothes were wet and heavy. His legs were shaking, but he was alive. He kept walking. By the afternoon of the second day, he could see the edge of the forest. Beyond it, the land turned flat and open, covered in short purple grass. In the distance, he could see the capital city rising against the sky. The city was beautiful in a terrible way. Towers of black crystal reached up like claws grasping at the clouds. Lights of purple and silver glowed from thousands of windows. A massive wall surrounded the city, and above it, patrol ships circled endlessly. Studied the city through a small telescope he had brought with him. The main gate was heavily guarded. Dozens of soldiers stood watch, checking everyone who entered. There was no way he could sneak past them. But he did not plan to sneak. He spent the second night at the edge of the forest, preparing himself. He ate the last of his food. He drank the last of his water. He cleaned his face and tried to make himself look presentable. Then, as the sun rose on the third day, Cole walked out of the forest and started toward the city of. The open ground offered no place to hide. If anyone looked his direction, they would see him immediately. But that was part of the plan. He was done hiding. He walked for 2 hours across the purple grass. No one stopped him. No alarm sounded. The patrol ships flew overhead but did not seem to notice the small figure walking below. When he reached the city wall, the guards at the gate stared at him in shock. They had never seen a human before except in pictures. They did not know what to do. Raised his hands to show he carried no weapons. Then he spoke in perfect, using the language he had spent years learning. "I am Cole," he said. I wish to enter your city in peace." The guards looked at each other. One of them raised a communication device and started speaking rapidly. Waited. Within minutes, more guards arrived. They surrounded him, pointing weapons at his chest. Did not move. He kept his hands raised and his face calm. "You are human," one of the guards said, as if he could not believe his own eyes. "I am." "How did you get here? How did you reach our world?" "That is a long story. I would be happy to tell it to your queen." The guards laughed. The idea of a human asking to see the queen was amusing to them, but they did not kill him. They were curious, and they knew the queen had ordered the capture of a human just days ago. They bound his hands with metal cords and led him through the city gates. Inside the city, chaos spread like fire. Word passed quickly that a human was walking through the streets. People came out of buildings to see. They lined the streets, pointing and whispering. Some shouted insults, others threw things. But many simply stared in silence, watching this strange creature who walked among them without fear. Kept his head high and his pace steady. He looked at the faces around him and saw what he expected to see: fear, hatred, confusion. These were the same expressions humans wore when they saw. The two species were mirrors of each other, each afraid of what they did not understand. The guards led him through the city for nearly an hour. They could have taken a faster route, but they wanted people to see. They wanted everyone to know that a human had been captured. Finally, they reached the palace. The Imperial Palace was the largest building had ever seen. It rose from the center of the city like a mountain of black stone, covered in carvings of heroes and ancient symbols. The main entrance was a door 30 meters tall, guarded by soldiers in ceremonial armor. The guards pushed forward. "Move," they ordered. Walked through the massive door and into the palace. Inside, the corridors were long and cold. Torches of purple flame lined the walls, casting dancing shadows. Servants stopped and stared as passed. Some ran away. Others pressed themselves against the walls, too afraid to move. Counted his steps. He counted the turns. He memorized the route in case he needed to find his way out again, though he knew that was unlikely. He would probably never leave this palace alive. But that was acceptable. He had known the risks when he started this journey. He had made his peace with death long ago. The guards finally stopped before another massive door. This one was made of silver metal, carved with images of the royal family. Above the door, words were written in the language. "The Queen protects." "Wait here," one guard ordered. He disappeared through a side entrance. Waited. His heart was beating fast now, but he kept his face calm. He had practiced this moment 1,000 times in his mind. He knew what he wanted to say. He knew what he needed to do. The guard returned after several minutes. "The Queen will see you," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. The silver doors swung open. Beyond them lay the throne room. It was the largest room had ever entered. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into darkness. The floor was polished black stone that reflected the purple light from dozens of torches. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the obsidian throne. And on the throne sat Queen. Walked forward slowly. His bound hands hung in front of him. His boots echoed on the stone floor. Every step brought him closer to the young woman who ruled an empire. She was beautiful, he realized, in a cold, dangerous way. Her silver eyes watched him with an intensity that made him feel exposed, as if she could see through his skin to his bones. He stopped 10 paces from the throne. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other, human and separated by so much pain and blood and death. Then did something that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. He bowed. Not the deep bow of a servant, not the fearful bow of a prisoner. It was the respectful bow of someone greeting an equal. It was the kind of bow one leader might give to another. When he raised his head, he saw confusion in the Queen's eyes. She had not expected that. You ordered my capture, said in her language. I thought I would save you the trouble. The queen's eyes narrowed. You speak our language. I do. How is that possible? I have been studying your people for 5 years, your majesty. Your language, your history, your beliefs. I wanted to understand you before I came here. Before you came here, the queen leaned forward on her throne. You planned this. You intended to be captured. I intended to speak with you, said. Capture was simply the fastest way to arrange a meeting. A murmur ran through the guards and servants gathered in the throne room. This was not how prisoners behaved. This was not how humans were supposed to act. Queen stood from her throne and descended the steps slowly. She walked toward until she stood close enough to touch him. Up close, she was taller than him by several inches. Her silver eyes looked down into his brown ones. You are either very brave, she said softly, or very stupid. Met her gaze without looking away. I have been told that before, your majesty. Why are you here? What do you want? I want to tell you a story, said, and I want you to listen. Queen stared at the human standing before her. He was not what she had expected. The propaganda her mother had created showed humans as wild animals, driven by violence and greed. This man was calm. His eyes held sadness, not rage, and he spoke her language as if he had been born on Prime. A story, she repeated. You crossed an empire to tell me a story. Yes, your majesty. I could have you killed right now. My guards would obey with a single word from me. I know. You are not afraid. Was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I have already lost everything that mattered to me. Death does not frighten me anymore. Studied his face. She could see the truth in his eyes. This man had suffered greatly. Whatever had brought him here was not ambition or foolishness. It was something deeper. Everyone leave us, she commanded. General stepped forward. My queen I cannot allow. I said leave. Her voice was cold, now. The general hesitated, but he knew better than to argue when she used that tone. He bowed and led the guards and servants out of the throne room. The silver doors closed behind them with a heavy sound. And we're alone. The queen returned to her throne but did not sit down. She stood beside it, one hand resting on the cold obsidian arm. Speak, then. Tell me your story. Took a deep breath. 3 years ago, your forces attacked a human colony called New Virginia. It was a small world far from Earth. About 4 million people lived there. Farmers, teachers, engineers, families. Said nothing. She remembered New Virginia. It had been one of her mother's final campaigns before her death. My family lived on New Virginia, continued. My wife was named. She was a doctor. She spent her days helping people, healing the sick. She had the kindest heart of anyone I ever knew. He paused. His voice had started to shake, but he steadied it. My daughter was named Emma. She was 6 years old. She loved animals and music and asking questions about everything. She wanted to be a space explorer when she grew up. She wanted to see every star in the galaxy. Felt something stir in her chest. An uncomfortable feeling she could not name. When your ships came, there was no warning, no chance to evacuate. The attack lasted 3 hours. When it was over, 4 million people were dead. War requires sacrifice, said. The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Died when a building collapsed on her. I was holding her hand when it happened. One moment she was there and the next she was gone. I could not save her. His eyes glistened, but no tears fell. He had cried too many times. There were no tears left. Emma died in my arms. She was not hit directly. The blast threw us both to the ground. When I woke up, she was not breathing. She looked like she was sleeping. I kept calling her name, waiting for her to open her eyes, but she never did. The throne room was completely silent. Found that she could not look away from this human and his pain. I wanted to die after that, said. I thought about ending my life many times, but something stopped me. I started asking myself questions. Why did this happen? Why do our people fight? What could possibly justify the death of a 6-year-old girl who never hurt anyone? "We are at war," said quietly. "In war, people die." "But why are we at war?" Took a step forward. "Do you know how this conflict started? Do you know why your mother first attacked human space?" Hesitated. She had grown up hearing that humans were dangerous, that they threatened security, that they needed to be conquered before they became too strong. But she had never questioned those teachings. "Your mother attacked us because we refused to submit," said. 15 years ago, an ambassador came to Earth. He told our leaders that they had a choice: join the Empire as subjects or face destruction. Our leaders refused. They said that humanity would never kneel to anyone. "That was arrogance," said. "Your people should have accepted their place." Perhaps, or perhaps they believed something you do not understand. They believed that freedom is worth dying for. They believed that some things matter more than survival. Shook her head. "Pretty words, but they do not change reality. Your species is weaker than mine. You cannot win this war." "You are right," said. "We cannot win. Your ships are better than ours. Your weapons are stronger. If this war continues, humanity will eventually be destroyed." "Then why do you keep fighting?" "Because we have to." His voice was firm now. "Because surrender means giving up everything that makes us who we are, our freedom, our dignity, our right to choose our own future." He took another step forward. "But I did not come here to argue about war and peace. I came here to ask you a question, Your Majesty." "What question?" "Do you know why your mother really started this war?" Frowned. "I just told you. Humans refuse to submit." "That is the official story. But I have spent years studying your history. I have read documents that your government tried to hide. Your mother did not attack us because we were a threat. She attacked us because she was afraid. Afraid of humans. Afraid of what we represent. Your empire is built on conquest. You take worlds by force and make their people obey through fear. That system works as long as everyone believes that resistance is pointless." Looked directly into her silver eyes. "But humans showed the galaxy that resistance is possible. We proved that a small species can stand up to a mighty empire and refuse to break. Your mother was not trying to conquer humanity. She was trying to destroy an idea." Felt her hands clenching into fists. "You do not know what you're talking about. I know that your mother killed millions of innocent people because she was afraid of losing control. I know that you have continued her war without ever asking whether it was justified. And I know that somewhere inside you, there is doubt. That is why you wanted to capture a human alive. You wanted to understand us because you are not sure your mother was right." Silence. His voice echoed through the throne room. "You know nothing about me. I know you are not your mother." The words hit like a physical blow. She stepped back, her silver eyes wide. "I have studied everything I could find about you," continued. "I know that you opposed the attack on New Virginia. I know that you argued with your mother about the war. I know that when you took the throne, you ended the practice of executing prisoners. You are not the monster your mother was." "How could you possibly know any of that?" "Information finds its way out even from palaces. Servants talk, officers talk." I listened. Turned away from him. She walked to the window and looked out at her city. The purple light of evening was falling, casting long shadows across the towers. "Why did you come here?" she asked without turning around. "What do you really want?" Walked toward her slowly. The guards would have stopped him, but they were gone. He stood beside the Queen of the Empire and looked out at the same view. "I want you to know that we are not your enemies," he said. "Humans are not monsters. We are people just like we love our families. We grieve when we lose them. We dream of better futures for our children." "Emma loved looking at the stars," he continued. "She used to point at them and ask me what worlds were out there. I told her that someday, maybe humans and aliens would explore them together in peace. She liked that idea. Closed her eyes. She sounded like she was a special child. She was, and she is gone now because of this war. Millions of children are gone, children too. Your soldiers have families. When they die in battle, their parents weep. Their children grow up without them. I know the cost of war, said quietly. Then help me end it. The queen opened her eyes and looked at. You think it is that simple. You think I can just stop a war that has been going on for 15 years. No, I think it will be the hardest thing you have ever done. But I also think you are the only one who can do it. Why? Because you are young enough to change. Your mother could not see past her hatred and fear, but you are different. You can choose a new path. You can be remembered as the queen who brought peace instead of the one who brought more death. Was silent for a long time. The purple light faded into darkness outside the window. Stars appeared in the sky, the same stars that Emma used to point at. You ask too much, she finally said. I know, but I had to try. Turned to face him. In the darkness, her silver eyes seemed to glow. You really believe that peace is possible? I have to believe it, said. It is the only thing that keeps me going. The queen studied him for another long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. She reached out and removed the metal cords from his wrists. You will dine with me tonight, she said. We have more to discuss. Rubbed his freed wrists and nodded. Thank you, Your Majesty. Do not thank me yet. I have made no promises, but I will listen to what else you have to say. It was not peace, it was not even a truce, but it was a beginning. The dinner was held in a small room near the Queen's private chambers. It was not the grand dining hall where important guests were usually entertained. This room was simple, with a single table, 2 chairs, and walls lined with books. Had chosen it on purpose. She did not want servants listening. She did not want advisors watching. For the first time in her life, she wanted a conversation that was truly private. Sat across from her, eating food he had never seen before. Some of it was delicious. Some of it was strange. He ate everything without complaint. You are not afraid to eat our food, observed. My scanner told me it was safe for human digestion. Besides, if you wanted to kill me, you would not need poison. A small smile crossed the queen's face. It was the first time I'd seen her smile. You are honest. I appreciate that. Most people who speak to me only say what they think I want to hear. I have nothing to gain by lying, Your Majesty, and nothing to lose by telling the truth. They ate in silence for a while, then set down her utensils and looked at with her silver eyes. I have been thinking about what you said in the throne room, about my mother, about the war. And you were right. I did oppose the attack on New Virginia. I told my mother that destroying civilian colonies would only make humans fight harder. She did not listen. Humans do not surrender easily, agreed. It is both our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. My mother called it stubborn stupidity. She believed that if she killed enough of you, the rest would give up. Shook her head. She was wrong. Every attack made your people more determined. Every colony we destroyed created more soldiers for your armies. Fear does not create loyalty, only hatred. I understand that now, but understanding does not solve the problem. Stood and walked to a window. The stars were bright tonight, scattered across the purple sky like diamonds. If I announce peace tomorrow, my generals will rebel. Half the empire will think I have gone mad. They have been told for 15 years that humans are monsters who must be destroyed. Then do not announce peace tomorrow, said. Change takes time, start small. What do you suggest? Thought carefully before answering. Begin by stopping the attacks on civilian targets. Only engage military ships. Let the human colonies rebuild without fear. That will seem like weakness. It will seem like strategy. Tell your generals that destroying civilians wastes resources. Tell them that a living colony can be conquered later, but a dead one produces nothing. They will accept that logic. Consider this, and then open communication channels. Not peace talks, not at first, just communication. Let humans and talk to each other, trade information, learn about each other. You want us to become friends. There was doubt in her voice. I want us to stop being strangers. Fear comes from not knowing. If our peoples can see each other as real beings instead of monsters in stories, peace becomes possible. Turn back to face him. You have thought about this for a long time. 3 years, every day since I lost my family, I asked myself what could have prevented their deaths. The answer was always the same: understanding. If our peoples had understood each other, the war might never have started. Or humans could have simply submitted. No, his voice was gentle but firm. Submission is not understanding, it is surrender, and humanity will never surrender. We would rather die as free people than live as slaves. That is not something you can change. Then how can there ever be peace? There can be peace between equals, not between master and servant. If the Empire can accept that humans will never be subjects, then we can be allies instead of enemies. Laughed softly. You ask me to undo 15 years of war and centuries of tradition. I ask you to be better than your ancestors. The words hung in the air between them, felt their weight pressing down on her shoulders. She was 23 years old. She had been queen for 2 years, and now a human was asking her to change the course of galactic history. My advisors will say I am being foolish, she said quietly. They will say you have manipulated me with your sad story about your daughter. Have I? Looked into his brown eyes. There was no deception there, only pain and hope and something that looked like faith. No, she admitted. You have shown me something I did not want to see, the truth. The truth is not always comfortable. No, it is not. She sat back down across from him. Very well, Cole, I will try your way. I will order my forces to stop attacking civilian targets. I will open communication channels with your people, but I want something in return. Name it. Stay here on Prime, as my advisor. Was surprised. Your people will not accept a human advisor. I am the queen. They will accept what I tell them to accept. Her voice was hard now, the voice of a ruler. I need someone who understands humans, someone who can help me navigate the path to peace. You are the only one qualified. I would be a prisoner in everything but name. You would be alive, and you would be helping to build the peace you came here to create. Is that not worth some sacrifice? He thought of Emma. He thought of the promise he had made to himself in that tiny escape pod, drifting through enemy space. He had said he would try anything to end this war. I will stay, he said, for as long as I am useful. Good, extended her hand across the table, recognized the gesture from his studies. It was the way of sealing an agreement. He took her hand in his. Her skin was cool and smooth. Her grip was strong. This will not be easy, she warned him. There will be resistance. There will be setbacks. People on both sides will want this to fail. I know, but we have to try. You keep saying that. Why? Why do you have so much faith in something so unlikely? Squeezed her hand gently before letting go. Because of Emma. She believed that humans and aliens could explore the stars together in peace. I promised myself I would make her dream come true. A promise to a dead child. Yes, do you think that is foolish? Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think it is the most human thing I have ever heard. The next morning, Queen summoned her council. She stood before them in her throne room and announced that she was changing the strategy of the war. No more attacks on civilian targets. No more destruction of colonies. They would engage only military vessels from now on. General protested. Prince looked confused. The other advisors whispered among themselves. Silenced them all with a look. I have made my decision, she said. This war has cost us too much already. We will find a new way forward. It was not peace, not yet, but it was the first step. Within a month, the human government noticed that the attacks had stopped. They were suspicious at first, waiting for the trap, but no trap came. Within 6 months, opened a communication channel with Earth. It was secret, known only to a few people on each side, but conversations began. Within a year, the first peace treaty was signed. It was a small agreement covering only trade and prisoner exchange, but it was a start. Within 5 years, humans were building joint research stations. Scientists from both species worked together, studying the galaxy they shared. Within a generation, the two peoples were allies. Not friends, not yet. Trust takes time to build, but the killing had stopped. Children on human worlds and worlds grew up without knowing war. And Cole remained on Prime, serving as the Queen's advisor. He never married again. He never had another child, but he found purpose in his work. Every day, he helped build the peace that Emma had dreamed about. When historians asked him later why he had taken such an impossible risk, he always gave the same answer. Humanity does not survive by hiding. We survive by reaching out, even to those who want to destroy us. That is what makes us human. Queen, by then known throughout the galaxy as the Peacemaker, was asked the same question many times. Her answer never changed. He walked into my throne room without fear. He had lost everything, but he still believed that understanding was possible. How could I not listen to someone like that? At night, when could not sleep, she sometimes walked to a balcony in the palace where she could see the stars. Often joined her there. They would stand in silence, watching the lights in the sky. Once asked him what he thought about when he looked at the stars. "I think about Emma," he said. "I think about how she used to point at them and dream of worlds she would never see. Do you think she would be proud of what we have done?" Smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a peaceful one. "I think she would say, we still have work to do." And then she would ask 100 questions about what the aliens are like. Laughed softly. "I would have liked to meet her." "She would have liked you." She was always curious about people who were different. They stood together under the stars, human and two people who had chosen peace over war, hope over hatred. The future was uncertain, as futures always are. But for the first time in many years, it was bright. And somewhere among the stars, a little girl's dream was coming true.